Welcome to Crush Your Sugar Cravings Summit. I'm Michelle Jolly with Healthy Horizons Coaching. Today we're going to be interviewing Florence Christophers. Florence is a former sugar addict, words she never thought she'd say. After 20 plus years of trying everything, Florence was introduced to a technique that comes out of the drug and alcohol recovery field that ended her addiction quickly, easily, and permanently. Today, Florence is a health coach on a mission to help others eliminate their runaway consumption of refined sugar and carbohydrates without all the trial and error that she had to go through. She helps to reduce the rise of sugar-related lifestyle diseases that cause unspeakable suffering. Florence offers private coaching, online courses, and live events, including her annual Kick Sugar Summit, which started in 2015. You can find her at kicksugarcoach.com and kicksugarsummit.com. Let's welcome Florence. Thanks so much for being here today. It's great to have you.
My pleasure, Michelle.
Yeah, let's jump in. We got a little taste of your background, but give us a little more info on your story and how you got to this place in life, and how did you figure out you had an addiction?
Oh gosh, great questions. Okay, so I think that my love affair with sugar was actually multi-generational. My paternal, I think both my maternal, but definitely my paternal grandmother was a lover of sugar and chocolate for sure. And she was always sneaking treats to us. And so very early on, I recall being very excited about dessert and could hardly wait to go for ice creams. And even though I had access to sugar unlimited, in my home, there was ice cream in the freezer and cookies on the counter and Pop-Tarts in the cupboard, and right, it was all around, and pop always in the fridge. There was never any food consciousness in we just ate normal for a family. But I still have memories of sneaking it, of stealing it, of lying to get access to it, and I didn't need to. And I think back, right? Did you have that as well?
Not so. It was around, but I don't remember sneaking it. It was just kind of out there.
Okay. Yeah. So I feel that a lot of us who are addicted to sugar can look back at in early childhood and go, oh yeah, the early signs of somebody who was hooked into something was there.
Yeah.
So all my childhood, I just ate at breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and everything in between, right? So it was sugary cereals for breakfast, sandwiches, white bread. Sometimes, kid you not, my father's side of the family are Dutch, and we would have a tradition for lunch of having white bread with butter, with brown sugar, and I'd roll it up into sort of like this little, oh my gosh. Or it would be chocolate sprinkles.
Yeah.
Chocolate sprinkles, kid you not. So I didn't really stand a chance. Sugar was sugar and white flour and processed refined carbohydrates were an entire part of my childhood. Not surprisingly, by the time I hit my mid-teens, I was struggling with significant health issues. I had blinding migraines. I was getting a significant cystic acne, which was horrible and painful and embarrassing. And I also was gaining weight. At that time, I was pushing a size 16. I was almost double my dress size when I was 14, when I was about 15, 16 years old. And I just looked like this giant bloated, my moods were terrible. I was getting depressed. And I didn't understand it because I'm actually by nature a pretty upbeat, naturally optimistic, high energy, life's great, everything's an adventure. Both my parents were like that. They were high-spirited, adventurous, positive people most of the time. And I got that. But in my teens, my moods were tanking. I was having dark days, and I noticed that my binging was starting to get worse. It was entirely tied to my efforts to diet. So as I was trying to pull out the junk food so I could lose weight, I was finding that I would go a few days and then I would wind up binging. So now I not only have a sugar addiction, but now I have a binge eating disorder. And for small stretches of my life, I did dabble with bulimia, but I actually truly hate vomiting. It's such a horrible experience that fortunately for me, that was just a no-go. So I stuck with this many years of struggling with many years of desperately trying to control my runaway consumption of refined carbohydrates, as I like to say. and binging on them. And it wasn't really until I was in my early 20s that that I had an awakening moment, like truly one of those moments where your life is never the same again, ever. Like I was never, ever going to go back to the same kind of consciousness I had. I was having chronic blinding migraines. So as a university student, perfectly happy. My life's great. I love being in university. I lived on campus. I had friends around all the time. My life was good. But I would have these blinding migraines that would leave me in the dark on the weekends. While everyone else was out partying, I was suicidal. Like I would just hold my head and it would throb and pound and I'd vomit, and there was nothing I could do. And I was in and out of urgent care getting, back then they used to just give us shots in the butt of that wasn't morphine. Sorry, it was Gravol and Demerol, I believe was what they were giving me back then, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
So, and sometimes it would take the pain away and sometimes it was just barely dull it. So I was in a desperate place. And one of my friends had passed me a book called The Sugar Blues. Have you read it?
No, not yet.
Okay, it's fantastic. It's one of the very first books, mainstream books out on the market that talked about sugar and sugar addiction and the profoundly damaging effects that refined carbohydrates have on our body, minds, and spirits. So I remember getting this book and thinking this is completely irrelevant to my migraines, and I was irritated that somebody could possibly think that food was related to my headaches. Like surely it was something catastrophic, way more serious than what I was eating. Anyways, I did read the book and it changed my life. William Duffy set me on fire. He awakened me to the possibility that the power was within me to heal my body so that my migraines could be healed. But little did I know, and he didn't talk about this very well at all, little did I know that I was entering now into this really powerful, protracted power struggle with refined carbohydrates. So sugar and flour, pasta bread, sugar in all of its various different forms. And I just thought, because I was so passionate and I was so inspired by William Duffy to get off it, that it would just be easy, because he kind of makes it sound like that. You just need to get off this, just give it up. I'm like, I'm doing it. I'm going to do this. And I would talk about my roommates about this. And I went to my doctor and I was so excited and I was talking, and everybody poo-pooed it. It was like, no, that's not going to do anything. It's not going to hurt, but it's not going to help. And so I was really discouraged, but I basically knew in my soul, in the depths of my bones, that I needed to get off of sugar. And only someone who truly is addicted, that really, truly knows that it's killing them, is able to sustain decades of cultural counter messaging, right? Like I was told to moderate. You need to moderate your consumption, Florence. And if you can't moderate, you have issues. You need to go seek therapy because you should be able to moderate. Or I was told that I needed, some sort of supplement or pharmaceutical or something, right? But it was never, the message was never, you just need to break up with it. You need to let it go. You need to walk the path of abstinence. And that didn't come into my world until much later. So I was just white knuckling it, and I was struggling to sort of get it out of my diet, and I was on again, off again. Truth be told, my binges got worse, but so did my stretches of freedom. Or it wasn't freedom, but I should say my stretches of abstinence, of being on whole foods. Year over year, and almost 2 decades over 2 decades, I got better and better at eating more whole foods, more vegetables, more organic eventually. And then I got into the higher quality meats that were free range, and I tracked down local farmers, and all of that was getting better and better and better. But running parallel was an addiction that was actually sort of losing its grip. Like I would say for about 10 years or 12 years, I was about 95% sugar-free.
Wow.
But it wasn't good enough, Michelle. It wasn't enough to fully resolve and heal my. Later on by my mid to late 20s, I wound up with a really severe case of rosacea, acne rosacea. Part of it was because I was doing my Master's of Philosophy in Trinity College in Dublin, Ireland, and I lived in a graduate student residence. And crazy as this sounds, for the rainy season, in our kitchen, there was this giant brick wall. And for about 3 or 4 months of the year, there was about an inch, just slightly less than an inch of mold, the entire wall.
Oh.
Kid you not, kid you not.
Wow.
And I was mold sensitive, and probably from my decades of eating sugar that creates disruption in the microbiome that led to an over proliferation of candida, I was ripe to go into that building and get violently ill. My skin was so bad that it was purple and swollen, and I had hundreds of little tiny pimples all over my face. They were so bad and various stages of oozing that I couldn't wear makeup. So I had to walk around as a young, thank you. It was awful, Michelle. Like I wanted to die. And I mean, between my migraines and my rosacea, like it was so painful. Believe it or not, through most of it, I was still relatively happy. I just got lucky that way, but really unlucky that my sugar led to a precondition that made me susceptible to being really affected by this mold and this graduate student residence. So I went around for years with this condition, and I tried everything. I did 8 months of daily antibiotics. Every day, right? Everyone I tell that to, we just cringe, like, oh my God. It helped. I did topical this and I did topical that. And and the thing was, it just kept coming down to, you need to get rid of the high glycemic refined carbohydrates. And while I was 95% there, that 5% was still enough to keep that terrible condition alive in my body. And I used to wake up in the morning and my face, and I put a little, eventually I got smart and put a little sort of face towel down. But before I got smart, I would just wake up in the morning from my pillow, and I'd have to kind of peel a pillowcase off my face. And there's little bits of blood. Like, I can't tell you the number of prayers I said. Dear God, dear anything that'll listen to me, please, please, please help me get off these refined carbohydrates. Because I was truly sure that if I could just get that done, my migraines would improve. That had gotten much, much better over the years. And my rosacea might heal. Maybe it might heal, because no pharmaceutical was working. Nothing I was trying was working. There was no hope except for potentially changing my diet. So fast forward, it stuck with me for probably about 6 years. Oh gosh, no, like 7 or 8 years, believe it or not. And I have very few photos from that time, but I do have a couple. One day I'll put them up on my website, because people might think I'm exaggerating, and they'll go, he's not. Holy, that's crazy. I was in and out of specialist offices. Like, I was one of the worst cases of acne rosacea, certainly in a young person, that my doctors had ever seen. They were fascinated by me. And they basically diagnosed me with stage 4 rosacea that was turning ocular. And they said, you're going to lose your vision. You will go blind.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I was a researcher. I was an academic by nature, and later a university professor, actually. And so I would go into the medical schools, into their libraries, and I'd look up rosacea. I'd read everything I could about it. It was the most depressing thing I've ever done, because it kept saying incurable, progressive, leads to blindness. Like, I just thought, I have got to get off sugar. It's probably my only hope. But I didn't. I never really truly fully ended my addiction until one fateful day. I opened up my paper, and inside was this little tiny ad for a 12-step program for food addiction. And it asked questions like, do you binge eat sugar? Do you struggle with compulsive overeating? Do you find yourself obsessed about cookies and ice cream, chocolate and candy? I'm like, yeah, that's totally me. So I called the number, and I got this fabulous man named Ron. And Ron's like, Florence, you sound like one of us. You better get down here. So the next night I went to a meeting, and I stayed with that particular 12-step program for food addiction for almost 3 years. And I'll tell you this much, there's so many moments that were transformative. They were so shocking and powerful and incredible that it almost stuns you. Like, you just think, if I didn't see this with my own eyes, I wouldn't believe that this had truly happened. I come in, I get a sponsor, they give me a meal plan, and they read me the riot act. Here's the deal. I'm going to talk to you every day for 15 minutes. But the minute I get the sense that you're not taking this seriously, you're not worth my time, and I'm going to drop you. This is a deadly disease. People die of this all the time. If this is a joke to you, you can go find someone else to work with.
Wow.
And she described me as being like someone who's in a hospital, who's got this IV bag. You know how people walk around with the pole, the IV bag? She goes, the pole and the IV bag and the medicine in that bag is this program. And you're going to walk around in your little hospital ground with your ass showing in the back for as long as you need for the rest of your life, right? Like, this is a forever thing. And she said, you know, I want you to be humble. I want you to know that your backside is exposed here, because you don't know anything. You just sit down, shut up, follow this meal plan. It's 100% whole foods. And I'll talk about what the meal plan was. It was transformative. And she goes, you go to 3 meetings a week. You call me every day, and you make 5 phone calls to other people in your program. And she said, you follow these food rules. No sugar, no starches, no snacking in between meals. You weigh and measure everything, and you keep your meals simple. Those were the 5 rules. And that was passed down through my 12-step program. And it took me about almost 2 years to get 90 days of back-to-back abstinence. And in my program, because it was like, they meant business. They meant business. People came in with cancer, diabetes, serious depression, obesity, or they're overweight or obese. I was the only person that by then I was kind of at a really good weight, because I had taken up running and I was 95% where I needed to be. So my weight dropped off and it landed in 135, and I've been that weight for almost 25 years. Like, it just doesn't budge. Yeah. I found my set point, but I needed to obviously eat mostly whole foods. So I was given this meal plan with the instructions that until you've got 90 days of back-to-back abstinence, you follow it perfectly. You're not allowed to talk in the meetings. You can't go to the front of the room and share your story.
Wow.
Talk about your day. Nope. Zip. Nada. You don't say boo. You sit in the back till you got your 90 days of back-to-back abstinence. So I would get to day 17, and then I'd do something wrong, like I wouldn't finish my lunch, or there's all these other sort of rules. I very rarely went back to sugar and flour, but anyways, or day, 63, and I'd lick my finger, or I'd eat a strawberry, or something crazy, right? It was that strict. Wow. Eventually, and I remember saying to them, why can't I go to the front of the room and talk? Yeah. And they said, because as long as you've got sugar or flour in your bloodstream, you're crazy. Oh, you're crazy. Huh. Like, you're whiny, you're moody, your brain chemistry is like all imbalanced. You're just gonna go out and tell sob stories about how hard this is, and we don't want to hear it. Sit down, shut up, get your 90 days of back-to-back abstinence, and watch the miracle. Watch what's going to happen when you finally, truly, fully get all the processed junk out of your body, all of it, everything. And they were right. So when I finally got my 90 days of back-to-back abstinence, Michelle, the very first thing obviously, I went to the front of the room and I told my story, and it was like one of the happiest days of my whole life. Yeah. And it was packed because everybody knew how hard I had worked to get my 90 days, right? It's like, it's a big deal for anybody to get a chip. But for me, it was like years in the making. It was like, I was never going to get there. I was a hardcore addict, I'll tell you. Anyways, eventually I get to the front of the room and I tell my story, and it was so exciting. Obviously, you can tell I enjoy telling my story. And I eventually left that meeting with hugs and tears, and just, it was such a beautiful day. And I went right to Walmart. And do you know what's the very first thing, why I went to Walmart? Can you guess?
I hope not sugar, but.
oh gosh, no. I was long since past that, but more or less. I didn't crave it anymore. It was kind of a non-issue, but I went to the photo place and said, take a picture of me. I just got my 90 days and my skin is perfect. Oh. It totally healed, Michelle, like totally healed. I could just still cry about it. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I was so grateful, but it took 100% abstinence for me, even the tiniest amount, and it would still flare. I was that sensitive. Anyway, so that was just beautiful. And I watched other people day over day, week over week, month over month, year over year, walk to the front of the room and they got their 90-day chip and say, I walked into these rooms 5 months ago, 6 months ago, 75 pounds heavier. I walked in on 11 medications and I'm on 10 and I got one more to go and I'm confident I can eliminate it. I used to be depressed. I'm off antidepressants. Unbelievable. But the very first person that I personally witnessed with my own eyeballs shrink before my eyes that truly fully became non-diabetic after decades of being on insulin was a guy named Eric. And I tell this story all the time and I won't go into details, but basically Eric got the meal plan, he did the program and he walked to the front of the room and he had lost 75 pounds and he said, I am fresh from the doctors. I am no longer diabetic. No, and this was, gosh, this was almost 18 years ago that I was in that program. And I remember nudging, the guy beside me. I'm like, I don't think that's possible. I don't think you can recover from diabetes. And he's like, Florence, we do it all the time in these rooms, all the time, all the time. And I remember thinking, but why isn't this on the front page of the New York Times?
Yeah.
Why? Why is this not the most cutting edge news that just rocks this world? He's like, I don't know, but it's actually easy. You just get off the processed junk, and diabetes, for most people, type 2, of course, can recover. They can reverse their disease. It's really incredible. So I kept talking about it and foaming at the mouth, and I was so evangelical back in those days about don't eat sugar. And now I'm like, if you ask me, I'll talk about it, but I no longer preach. I get that you need to be ready, and not everybody's addicted. Some people can do lots of people can do moderation.
Yeah.
And I envy that. In a way, I do, just because I feel like they can take it or leave it, and they can just easily leave it.
Right.
But addicts, it's not easy. I mean, it is and it isn't. Depending on the path that you take to your freedom, it's a much harder battle to sort of let go and unhook from its addictive grip. But I have to say, that program didn't set me free. That program gave me a meal plan that helped people lose weight, reverse lifestyle diseases. They helped people end cravings. It got them abstinent one day at a time. And it took an entire village, a whole community of people to help each other stay sugar sober. But it didn't get me free. I still had to attend 3 meetings a week. I had to talk to my sponsor every day, as enjoyable that was, as much as I appreciated her time. And do 12-step. It was a lot of work. And there was a moment in my life where I felt like I'm really grateful. I'm sugar-free completely. I'm a whole food woman, and my body is totally, and mind is transformed. I don't think I've been depressed since then. I can remember that I used to be depressed. I don't remember what it feels like. It's just such a distant memory. But I felt crazy around food. I was so obsessed and anxious. I was afraid of relapsing, and I was deeply resentful at the idea that I was going to have to attend a Wednesday night meeting for the rest of my life. That if something should fall on the calendar on a Wednesday night for my daughter, her ballet recital, I couldn't go, right? Because I had to attend 3 meetings a week, or my sponsor would drop me. And I just hit this point where I thought, this isn't freedom. This isn't what I want. I truly want to be able to follow this meal plan that I know does magic. And I want freedom in my head too. I want to be able to be like a cigarette smoker who 10 years earlier gave up cigarettes and never wakes up any day ever again and goes, it's just done, right? That's what I wanted.
Yeah.
And it took, so I came into my 12-step program when I was 35, 36. Yeah. Yep, 35, 36. But it wasn't until, and then I stayed there until I was about 38. And then it was another decade though. So I left program and I just kind of went out into the world and kind of mostly did my own thing. I mostly followed the meal plan. I did long stretches of 100% raw food. I dabbled with keto and paleo. I mean, that's what food addicts do, sugar addicts do. It's part of our addiction, actually, that we're constantly looking for novelty. And so even though we've got a meal plan that works, we're like, oh, let's mix it up a little. Oh my goodness. It works. It's all foods, Florence. So now I know today, that's why that simple piece is so important,
Yeah.
that I need to catch and recognize in my own mind that this bouncing around between being vegan and paleo and keto and raw and all those other things in between is all part of the addiction. You just get a whole food meal plan that works, and it's simple, and you go in and you replenish your body of the nutrients it needs, and you get on, and your life gets, you get your focus off of food. But that didn't come for me till I was actually doing my very first Kick Sugar Summit. You're going to learn so much by interviewing. Yeah, I learned so much so my very first summit, I was watching that sugar film, that documentary on Netflix by Damon Gameau, and I was so excited that finally the world was talking about sugar, because I'd been talking about it for years, and I was alone, and like, other than the odd book that I would read, really there was no one in my world that was a sugar addict or wanted to talk about it or geek out on the science, and so I was pretty much alone with this addiction for most of my life, other than obviously the days that I was in my 12-step meetings. But after that, I was on my own again, and I was so excited that there was this mainstream, big budget film about sugar, and I was like, this is so great. And anyways, halfway through the movie, I was watching it with my husband, and Damon Gameau was asking this poor kid who's just had all of his teeth yanked out if he's going to keep drinking Mountain Dew.
No.
Did you see the film?
No, not yet. I'm going to have to watch it. What's it called?
It's called That Sugar Film.
Okay.
Yeah, by Damon Gameau. He's out of Australia. It's super fun. There's like musical. It's brilliant. It's fabulous. Anyways, in the middle of this, I'm like, oh, Sean. So I pause. I'm like, Sean, so great. They're talking about sugar, but they're not talking about sugar addiction.
No.
They're not talking about, they're making it look easy. It's not easy for those of us, right? That are hooked.
Yeah, right.
That it just lights up our brain and hijacks our willpower. And oh my goodness. So I said to him, that's it. I'm going to do a summit on sugar addiction. It's going to be just for us, those of us who are going to watch this movie and go wake up the next day thinking this should be easy, and wind up in the years and years of struggle, and worse, wind up in those dark places of self-hatred. Because it is very hard for sugar addicts to not ask themselves, what is wrong with me? Why do I keep eating like this? Like, I'm a really bright, happy, competent, strong-willed woman who puts my head to things. What is it? Like, what is wrong with me? And, in and out of therapy and acupuncture, and I worked with a shaman, and I did rebirthing, I tried supplements. Nothing was working. Nothing. Really get me free. So, I'm so grateful that I decided to follow through on that. So I did the first summit on the topic of sugar in the world, on sugar addiction. Well, sugar addiction. And I interviewed one of my experts, and his name was Jack, and he came out of the drug and alcohol recovery field. And he kept talking about how it can be quick, easy, and permanent to end an addiction. And I was like, Jack, no, wasn't quick, it wasn't easy. And it wasn't permanent. I relapsed on and off and on and off for years.
Yeah.
Demoralizing. And he said, no, it is, Florence. It is. But let me teach you my little technique. So I said, okay, you're on. He did. And I'll tell you, it was like my second moment in my life that I will never, ever be the same. William Duffy awakened me to the issue of sugar, and Jack set me free. And it was in a blinding moment. Like, it wasn't a 2-second conversation. It was multiple sort of kind of like coaching calls. And then eventually we connected all these dots, and my brain just went, oh my gosh, I get that, Jack. I get it. Like, I really get it. So, and I teach that now in my courses. Basically, he taught it to me, and I'm so grateful, so grateful. In fact, I embarrassed myself sending him these emails after he taught it to me, and day after day, week over week, month over month, it was just easy, like effortless. I kept thinking, this shoe's gonna drop. It can't be this easy every day, but it was. But I would send him these little emails, and he'd be like, Jack, I'm still 100% sugar-free. It's so easy. I can't believe how well this works. And I'm so grateful. And I'm eternally indebted. And is it inappropriate to tell you that I love you? I love you, Jack. I love you. Thank you so much. Right? Very embarrassing. So basically, all I've done is I've just over the years perfected his approach. He works with alcoholics and drug addicts, and I work with sugar addicts. But I basically just pay it forward and pass it on.
Yeah.
And this is what I know today. From all of these 30 years of researching, of doing personal face plants of being so desperate I wanted to die, right? Just from the painful side effects of my love affair with sugar. My coaching, training, like all of it's come together. Here's what I know about sugar addiction and sugar addiction recovery. You need two things. You need a mindset shift that allows you to end your addiction at the level of consciousness. And you need a meal plan that removes the foods that trigger cravings for you. And for everyone, it's a little bit different, but there's some really common denominators. And, you know, obviously all forms of sugar. Some people can do stevia, believe it or not, but I don't dabble in that world. I did for a bit, but it just kind of keeps the addiction alive for me. I think too much about food, and you know what I mean? Like the whole goal is peace with food. Do not think you eat beautiful whole foods and you just get on with your life, you know?
Yeah.
And the second thing you need, is a meal plan that removes the foods that create the cravings, so that you're free at the level of the body and you're free at the level of the mind. Yeah.
Great. Yeah. Wonderful. Great story you have. Yeah. Very inspirational for everyone listening. So what about somebody, they just want to get started. They're not sure if they want to get in a program yet. They're just kind of dabbling in things. What might they do to kind of try out? I know that's not the best thing or to kind of commit to it, but if you don't have that big why yet, you don't have the pain and all the things that you had to deal with, what might they do just to try to get rid of sugar?
Oh, wonderful question. So the very first thing you're going to want to do is, I would say, you join a 28-day or a 1-month sugar-free challenge. And there's tons of people who offer them. And for me, that's where I start clients that don't know if they want to, if they're truly addicted. If they're not sure they are, they might be able to go back and moderate, in which case they want to reserve that right to have some flexibility in the food culture that we live in. Or they haven't had enough time off of sugar to really know that they're going to feel better. It's not a knowing yet, right?
Yeah.
So I would start with a 28-day cleanse or a 1-month cleanse where you just eat nothing but whole foods for 1 month. You go through a detox. Isn't pleasant. And there's stretches of those days where you're like, oh man, I felt pretty bad on sugar, but I feel worse off it. But that's why a cleanse is really helpful. I do work with people privately, and I'll walk them every day through a cleanse. I will literally call them like my sponsor called them.
Yeah.
It's really cool. Or we can do it as a group, and then you can kind of feed off each other's energies and support. So either way, it's a great place to start. And what it does is it gives you a personal experience of what life is like on the other side of refined carbohydrates. And you might go, oh my goodness, I never want to go back. Never. Teach me your technique. I want to know how to be able to say no to sugar and all this processed junk foods that I used to think was in everything, but it's actually not. Forever. I never want to put this back in my body. That's my truth now. And it will, and if you do it right, abstinence will feel like the joy of the answered prayer. Not like a lifetime of deprivation.
Yeah.
If you feel deprived, you're not doing it right for you. Because what you're doing is you're using willpower and you're trying to force yourself to do something. But there's a way better way of doing it by lining up, getting in touch with your truth, and then coming into alignment. And that's basically what Jack taught me to do, is to come into alignment where I do what I want to do. I don't want to eat that stuff. But sometimes it takes a cleanse for newbies to really know if it's their truth. And some people after 28 days will say, no, that was wonderful, and I do feel better, and I'm sleeping better, my skin's clear, and I have better energy, but I don't truly believe I'm an addict. I want to be able to go back and dabble. And then I'll say to them, okay, great. If you're going to be a dabbler, I just want you to rationally decide what that looks like before you wind up in the crazy of, is this the time that I dabble? Is this an exception? And then all of a sudden you're getting decision fatigue, right? You're thinking too much about it. So we kind of wrap it up that way, just to kind of say, yeah, if it's truly a birthday and I feel like eating it, then I can, that kind of thing. Is that helpful?
Yeah. I think that'll help people out to kind of figure out what the first step might be. Yeah, that's great.
You know what? Let me add 2 more things. This might be helpful as well. It's a recommendation that comes from a book that I recommend to everybody called Potatoes Not Prozac. It's by Dr. Kathleen de Maison.
Yeah.
And she talks about having protein with every meal. Have protein with every meal. So start there, even if your breakfast is like organic oats and organic blueberries and flax seeds and sunflower seeds and almonds and whatever, right? It sounds all beautiful, healthy whole foods, but add an egg to that. If you're a sugar addict in the early days of recovery, get some protein in with your breakfast. It can be a really helpful thing. Or the third advice I would give is get more leafy greens into your breakfast. Start with a lower carb breakfast, like 2 eggs, maybe you steam some spinach over a bed of salad with some guacamole on the side and some fresh salsa, and maybe a little bowl of blueberries. That sounds like a lot of food, and actually you might be surprised that over time, as you pull out the sugar, that your appetite for the whole foods does bump up a bit and you still lose weight. But yeah, something like that, and just see if that moves the needle in terms of your cravings later on in the day. Or, okay, this is for sure my last suggestion. You can start your day with a green juice. Greens, leafy greens, not fruits, no carrots, no, below the ground vegetables. We're talking parsley, cilantro, celery, maybe some cucumber. I usually do a bit of lime and some lemon, some ginger, some turmeric. You can do some romaine lettuce or whatever, and you juice it all up. And then watch what that does for you. For some people, it's like, whoa, I get a buzz of energy. I feel really great. And my cravings just drop right off. And weight starts to drop too. There's a compound in leafy greens that's called thylakoids. Thylakoids. And thylakoids have absolutely been proven now to reduce our cravings for carbohydrates, refined carbohydrates, and to stimulate and facilitate weight loss. So those, like, really, if you just start there, that is a powerful place to begin.
Yeah, that sounds great. Not too hard. Just
not too hard.
Little changes. Start out with yeah. And you also have a little free gift for everybody, another little technique that they can help them on their journey.
That's true. That is another great place for people who are not sure if they're sugar addicted, would like to start, or even if they know I'm addicted to sugar, but I want to sort of ease my way into this world of abstinence. Because right now, for most sugar addicts in the early days, the thought of never again eating their favorite foods feels like grief, feels despairing, it feels terrifying, it feels impossible. It is not. Sugar addiction can be ended like any other addiction on the planet. Absolutely. And people end addictions all the time, and a lot of them spontaneously. They just make a decision to never again shoot up heroin, smoke a cigarette, drink a drink. Same with sugar addiction. It can be ended. Not in the sense that you can never go back to sugar. Never. We are addicts. We can't dabble, not a lick, not a bite, not a taste, nothing. A little bit leads to a lot, and you'll be back in the crazy. So I do have a script that works with the EFT, Emotional Freedom Technique, and I put it together myself, and it's a 3-step process. So the first is to acknowledge that you have a craving. So when you're about to eat something that you really don't want to be eating, I call it your sugar dragon. So there's 2 parts of you: the true self that has a body and has a mind, but is not a body and is not a mind. That's the true self. So that's the true Florence and the true Michelle.
Yeah.
But inside our limbic brain is a rogue pleasure drive that I call your sugar dragon. And it wants the donut or the chocolate or whatever, the pizza, the junk. We don't. We know we want whole foods.
Yeah.
It's so true. So there's these 2 parts of us, and that's the power struggle, right? These 2 pieces, power struggle. So when you're in the midst of a craving and your dragon's prowling around and starting to manipulate you and suggest and justify the consumption of the donut, you can go, oh, yeah, I can feel this urge. I'm looking at the donuts, looking really attractive, really, really delicious. This is when you go, okay, I'm just going to take 10 minutes, maybe 15, and go sit down and do this script and just be curious to see what it does. And you can say, I can go eat the donut after if I want. Yeah. Some people will use that strategy just to kind of get them to do the 15 minutes.
Yeah.
First step is to acknowledge, I really want that donut. Ooh, that's so good.
Yeah.
And just to honor that truth, that there's a strong urge to eat the donut. Step 2 is to go, but I don't really want to eat the donut. I don't. I see it as pain. I see it as candida. I see it as cavities. I see it as fatigue 2 hours later. I see it as more cravings later on down the day. I see it as demoralizing. I see shame, guilt, and regret at the end of my day today if I eat that donut. You see the truth. And then the final step of the script is you start to look at the addiction itself. I'm ready to let this addiction go and begin to ask the question, I don't really need the donut. So what do I need? What does my body need right now? What does my emotional self need right now? What does my spiritual self need right now? And then you sit in that and you go inside, because the answers in your freedom are actually inside. It's not even from my coaching or my programs. I teach you a skill to get off of sugar, and then I teach you the skill of how to sit in your feelings and just show up and just say, what do you need, sweetheart? It's not the donut, so what do you need? And don't think you know the answer. Let it surface.
Yeah.
I need to cry. I'm tired. I need to get to bed. I need a nap. I need to talk to Bob about that comment he made in the meeting today at work. Right?
Yeah.
And getting to the real root of what we really need is so beautiful and so much better than a donut. So yeah, so I offer my free script. You can go to my website and get it. And then it comes with a free 30-minute consultation to anybody who wants to connect with me if they're looking to get some freedom around sugar.
Yeah. Oh, wonderful. Such a great gift for everyone. Yeah. And just, yeah, that's great to think more about the root cause of your feelings versus letting the craving just kind of take over. Yeah. Wonderful information.
And just be curious about it. Like, don't fight it. Just be curious. Okay, what's behind this craving? Because we're sugar addicts, food works really well for us in terms of pleasure and comfort. But it becomes our catch-all. Like every problem, it has the same solution to our body, because it just thinks, oh, I know what we should do. We should go have a chocolate bar. Let's go have some cake, whatever. But there's a whole world of other ways that we can bring pleasure and comfort to ourselves. And until we're willing to truly stop using food for comfort, refined addictive carbohydrates for comfort, we don't ever really make the time or the space or put the effort into finding them. And so the beautiful thing about being on the other side of our addiction is we have no choice. No choice. Because there's no getting through tough moments with food anymore. So we are in it, and it's raw. And it's beautiful. And for the first time, we're like, I use this analogy of, as mothers, when our babies are crying, when they're younger, like really young or something, and they're crying, and we can't, it's kind of annoying, or we're in a store and it's pitching a fit or something, and you're like, oh my gosh, what can I give it? And sometimes we just give it something to eat. It's sucked in its mouth. Like, just shut it up. Can you buy me some time here? And then once the sucker's in the mouth and sugar does its magic, and it starts to come down and get soothed and pacified, and then maybe on down the road the crying stops. But we don't always go back and say, hey, what were you crying about? We're like, oh, we moved through the moment. Let's just move forward on with our day.
Made it through.
And that's what we're doing to ourselves. But what about if we stopped and we slowed down and we dropped down to eye level and we said to our kids, sweetheart, what do you need? What do you need? Or we picked the baby up and put it on our hip and, snuggled it in tight and kissed the top of its head and just said, I'm right here, kiddo, right? That's what we get to do on the other side of our addiction. And it is way better than any Black Forest cake I've ever eaten.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, wonderful. I loved how you, bring that in. Yeah, well, thanks so much for being with us today, and we've learned so much from you. And everybody go to her website and get the freebie and everything. Just, eat it all up.
Michelle, I should put it on my homepage, but will you give them a link to the free gift?
Yes. Yeah, okay, below this video, there'll be a link.
Good. Okay, awesome. Good. Yeah. I was going to say, it's not on my website. You need to use the link. But
yeah. We'll give them the link so it's nice and easy. Yeah.
Beautiful.
All right. Okay. Thanks so much. It's been wonderful being with you today. And everybody stay tuned. We'll have another video tomorrow. See you then.